Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into the fascinating and, let's be honest, often debated world of autonomous vehicles.
It certainly is. Lots of hype, lots of questions.
Exactly. And we've put together a really interesting set of sources for you. We've got a big report from the Victoria Transport Policy Institute. It's called Autonomous Vehicle Implementation Predictions, Implications for Transport Planning.
A hefty title, but important stuff in there.
Definitely. Then there's a pretty lively Reddit thread comparing Tesla, Waymo, and Cruise, their tech strategies.
The forums. Always interesting perspectives there.
Right. Plus, we looked directly at Waymo's website about their tech and a Toyota case study covering their EV and AV journey.
And that all leads up to the big news, right? The Toyota-Waymo partnership.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just announced. So, okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today, for you, the learner, is basically to cut through all the noise around AVs.
To find the signal in the noise, you could say.
Yeah. We want to get you the crucial insights, give you a clear picture of where things stand now, what realistic timelines actually look like, the potential benefits and the costs.
And how the big companies are actually building this stuff differently.
Totally. And fundamentally, what it all means for, how we plan our towns and cities, how we get around.
And one thing that hits you straight away, reading that VTPI report, is the caution. They really stress being skeptical about the super optimistic AV predictions.
They do, don't they? Why is that?
Well, the report points out that often the really rosy forecasts come from people or companies with a direct financial stake in seeing AVs rolled out fast.
Vested interests. Makes sense.
Right. And they might compare it to smartphones, how fast they took off, but maybe gloss over the pretty significant technical and practical roadblocks still in the way for AVs.
That's a great point. And the report, it actually uses examples like automatic transmissions or even airbags to make that point, doesn't it?
Exactly. Technologies with clear benefits, sure, but they still took decades to become really widespread. Not an overnight thing.
No, not at all. So here's where it gets, really interesting for you listening. The report basically says there's still massive uncertainty, just huge question marks.
About almost everything, really. How fast the tech will actually develop. What the real benefits and costs will turn out to be.
And how it's going to change our travel habits in the end. It's all kind of up in the air.
Yeah, and a lot of that uncertainty comes down to fundamental tech challenges. The report is clear. Getting AVs to work reliably everywhere, all the time. That's tough.
You mean like dealing with city traffic, bad weather?
Exactly. Mixed traffic, heavy rain, snow, unpaved roads, patchy mobile signal. It needs big steps forward technologically.
So that dream of level 5, totally driverless, anywhere, anytime.
The report suggests that could be many, many years away, maybe decades. It even raises the possibility it might not be feasible for a long time.
Wow. Okay, so those predictions of robotaxis everywhere next year, probably take those with a pinch of salt.
A big pinch. The more objective experts cited in the report, they see level 5 as a much longer game.
And even the more, let's say, optimistic scenarios in the report itself. They suggest maybe commercial availability in some places around 2030.
Yeah, maybe some limited areas.
Yeah.
But for most people to actually afford one and use it regularly, we could be looking at the 2050s.
Yeah.
Or even later.
There's that graphic in the report, too, the projections one. It really shows that slow, gradual curve visually, doesn't it? Different lines for sales, fleet penetration.
It really does. Market saturation might not even happen until 2070s or later,
Yeah.
depending on which estimate you look at.
So the big takeaway here for you, the learner, isn't just it's going to take a while. It's more that we actually have time.
Time to plan.
Yeah. Time to think about the rules, the infrastructure. Before these things are everywhere, it's not happening tomorrow. We have a window to try and get it right.
That's a crucial point. And cost is a massive factor in that slow adoption curve.
Right. The report says early AVs will likely be expensive.
Yep, expensive and maybe with limited performance initially. So why would lots of people rush to pay extra for a car that, can't handle a snowstorm or go somewhere off the main grid?
Good point. That Exhibit ES1 chart, it compares costs. Private AVs look more expensive than regular cars or public transport.
Generally, yes. Though maybe cheaper than current ride-hailing or traditional taxis with drivers. It's a complex picture.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Maybe most people's first ride in an AV won't be in one they own.
Could well be. Shared autonomous vehicles, robotaxis. The report sees them becoming more common in the 2030s.
Cheaper than a cab now, maybe.
Potentially, yeah. But maybe not the same level of service, No human driver to help with bags or give directions.
So private AVs might still be popular for convenience, comfort.
Especially outside dense cities, yeah. Suburbs, rural areas. The report suggests private ownership won't just vanish. People like their own space, their own car.
Interesting. Though the report does highlight a couple of areas where autonomy might take off sooner.
Ah, you mean trucking and buses?
Exactly. Long-haul trucking, buses, predictable routes, high labor costs.
Makes sense economically. The report thinks those could become pretty common in the 2030s and 40s.
So, okay, the economics and the timelines are obviously tied tightly to the technology itself. Let's dig into how companies are actually building these things. The sensors seem like a good place to start.
Definitely. And that Reddit thread we looked at had some great comparisons. The sensor approaches are, well, fundamentally different.
How so?
Well, you've got Waymo and Cruise. They use, like, everything. LiDAR, radar, cameras, a whole suite.
Redundancy, right. Multiple ways of seeing the world.
Exactly. For real-time spatial awareness, safety backups. The Reddit thread mentioned how even touching the bumper triggers a safety check on those vehicles.
And Tesla.
Tesla's path is different. Primarily cameras, plus their mapping software. They're aiming for a vision-only system, basically teaching the car to drive like a human sees.
That difference in sensors must affect how they handle maps, too.
Hugely. Waymo uses these super detailed HD maps. Think centimeter-level accuracy, knows exactly where lanes, curbs, signs are.
Like a super-powered GPS map.
Kind of, but way more detailed. They act as a guide. Though Waymo insists, and this came up in the Reddit discussion, they rely mainly on the live sensor data for driving decisions second by second.
There was some debate on Reddit about how much they really need the maps, wasn't there?
Yeah, a bit. Waymo says they can handle map inaccuracies, but the maps are clearly a core part of their strategy.
Whereas Tesla, famously, no HD maps.
Right. Their goal is a system that can drive anywhere just by seeing, without needing that pre-mapping effort. Like some others, Deep-Root, Xpeng are trying similar things.
It raises that big question about scalability, doesn't it? Creating and constantly updating those HD maps everywhere.
Exactly. Huawei even mentioned the massive cost and complexity of global HD mapping as a reason they're looking at other ways. It's a real philosophical split in the industry.
Two very different bets on how to solve the problem.
For sure. Now, how they process all that data, AI and machine learning are central to both, obviously. Perception, prediction, planning.
But the Reddit thread mentioned Tesla's making a shift, more end-to-end AI.
Yeah, that was a point raised. Moving towards a system where the AI learns more directly from sensor input to driving output, almost in one big step.
Instead of separate modules for seeing, thinking, acting?
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Waymo emphasizes their approach is more modular, maybe designed to be generalized across different places and vehicles. Some argue that modularity makes it easier to test and validate safely.
Which is pretty critical when you're talking about driving.
Absolutely. And this leads to that other big debate from the Reddit thread, data volume versus data quality.
Ah, yeah. Tesla has tons more miles driven, right, from all its customer cars.
Loads more miles, yes. But Waymo has incredibly rich data from its sensor suite, even if it's from fewer miles in more concentrated areas.
So does more data automatically win?
Not necessarily. Someone on Reddit made a great point, Lilberking. I think that how you filter, label, and train the AI on that data is probably way more important than just the raw amount.
Yeah.
Quality over just quantity.
Getting the right data and using it smartly?
Precisely. And their goals seem different too, shaping the tech. Waymo and Cruise, they're all in on driverless robotaxis. Level 4, level 5, that's the target.
Whereas Tesla's full self-driving, FSD, it's still level 2.
Correct. Still needs a human driver paying attention, ready to take over. The Reddit discussion really hammered that point. Tesla's current setup, especially the sensors, lacks the redundancy needed for true driverless operation like Waymo or Cruise aim for.
So that links back to cost and scaling again. The Reddit thread suggested Tesla's camera-only approach is partly about making it cheaper for mass production.
That's one interpretation, yeah. Avoiding expensive LiDAR to scale faster. But others argued it's maybe penny-wise, pound-foolish if it delays true driverless capability.
Because Tesla doesn't really have a public, fully driverless prototype running around without supervision yet.
Not in the same way Waymo and Cruise operate their services. No. And on the flip side, the complex sensors and computers in Waymo and Cruise vehicles add significant cost, which is partly why their services are still geographically limited.
And finally, there's the safety philosophy difference. Waymo Cruise are fail operational.
Meaning if something fails, the car should still be able to safely stop itself, maintain control.
And Tesla's FSD is fail-safe.
Meaning if it gets confused or something goes wrong, it's designed to hand control back to the human driver. A different approach to managing risk.
Okay, so bringing this all back to the bigger picture, the societal impact, planning. That VTPI report had some pretty stark warnings, didn't it?
It really did. One major concern is that AVs could actually increase how much we drive overall.
Increase how?
Well, by making travel easier for people who don't drive now, maybe reducing the hassle or cost of using a car, making longer commutes seem less painful.
So people might live further out, drive more, encouraging sprawl.
Potentially, yes. The report estimates AVs could boost total vehicle miles traveled by maybe 10 to 30% if we don't change policies. That projection graphic shows travel potentially climbing quite a bit.
That kind of flies in the face of the idea that AVs will just solve congestion, doesn't it?
It does. The hope is there. Reduce congestion, fewer accidents, lower emissions. But if overall driving goes up significantly, it could make those problems worse, not better.
Unless we manage it carefully.
Exactly. Things like dedicated AV lanes or platooning where AVs drive closely together might help, but they have their own costs and challenges. Exhibit 7 and that platooning graphic show potential fuel savings, but it's complex.
And the report even warns about safety. Even if AVs crash less per mile, if we drive way more miles.
Whole crashes could still go up. It's a sobering thought.
Definitely. And what about fairness? Social equity?
That's a huge consideration. On the one hand, AVs could be amazing for people with mobility issues, say the visually impaired. And maybe robotaxis offer cheaper rides for people who don't drive much. But the high cost of owning a private AV could leave lower-income folks behind. And if policies favor AVs, like building special lanes, that could disadvantage those who rely on public transport or can't afford an AV.
And the sprawl issue could hurt non-drivers, too, if it makes public transport harder to provide efficiently.
Precisely. It all points back to the critical role of public policy.
Governments need to be proactive.
Absolutely. The report really emphasizes this. Things like road pricing charging for driving based on time or distance managing curb space for shared AVs, integrating them smartly with buses and trains.
Without those kinds of policies.
The report suggests we're likely headed for more traffic and more sprawl, possibly losing out on many of the potential benefits.
Which makes that recent news about Toyota and Waymo even more interesting, doesn't it? Set against that policy backdrop.
It really does. It feels like a potentially significant step. A preliminary agreement, yes, but it signals serious intent to combine strengths.
Toyota's manufacturing power and software development through Woven, plus Waymo's AV tech.
Exactly. The aim seems to be developing new AV platforms together. It can speed things up quite a bit, both development and just getting vehicles out there.
And it looks like it covers both bases, personal cars and ride-hailing.
That seems to be the plan. Bringing Waymo's tech towards personally owned vehicles eventually, and also potentially using Toyota vehicles in Waymo's ride-hailing fleet.
Both companies talk about safety and expanding mobility access as the goals.
Right. And Waymo highlighted their own safety data in the announcement, claiming an 81% reduction in crashes causing injuries where they operate compared to human drivers.
That's a big number.
It is. So this partnership, it could leverage that safety potential, bring Waymo's tech to way more people via Toyota's scale, and give Waymo's service reliable vehicles. It feels like a potential game changer.
Okay, so let's try and wrap up this deep dive. What are the main takeaways for you, the listener?
Well, first, AV technology is definitely still developing. Lots of hurdles, technical, economic, societal. Don't believe all the hype about imminent ubiquity.
Right. Realistic timelines seem much longer, decades, not just a few years, for widespread use, especially affordable widespread use.
And companies are taking very different roads to get there. Tesla's vision-first approach versus Waymo and Cruise's sensor-heavy, HD map-reliant strategy. Each has pros and cons.
And crucially, public policy is going to be absolutely vital. How we manage this transition will determine whether AVs are a net positive or if they create new problems.
We can't just let it happen. We need to actively shape it.
And that Toyota-Waymo partnership. It's a really significant move, potentially accelerating how AVs integrate into both personal cars and shared services.
Definitely one to watch. Which leads us, I suppose, to a final thought for you to ponder.
Go for it.
Given everything we've talked about, the complexities, the potential downsides like more traffic and sprawl, the equity issues, what kinds of policies, transportation policies, land use policies, do you think we need to focus on now?
How do we make sure AVs actually benefit everyone, create better communities, not worse ones?
Exactly. How do we steer this towards sustainable and equitable outcomes? And just thinking about the tech itself, How will those different approaches from Tesla versus Waymo ultimately feel to us as users?
Will one feel safer, be more accessible, more affordable?
Yeah. How will those technical choices shape the actual experience of autonomous driving in the future? Lots to think about.
It certainly is. The AV journey is far from over, and we'll definitely keep diving into it.